Greetings, everyone. Welcome to a special bonus episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. Basically, this one is going to be short and sweet, but it's an announcement regarding a special new Patreon reward that's going to be available. And as always, you can find my Patreon page at patreon.com/banjopodcast. Basically, one of the most common requests I get via email is, do I have tablature for some of the exercises that the people are doing in the interviews? And I tend to have to say, no, sorry, I don't. And I don't really have time to transcribe all the things that people do in the interviews. And, you know, that's just not something that I'm able to offer. And even if I never made tab for the exact things that the people would play on the episodes, I always wanted to be able to offer just a little more insight into the exercises and the tips that they would talk about in a way that really showcased each player's unique style. So, in a true not all heroes wear capes moment, Eli Gilbert contacted me, and he's somebody who I know over the internet as a great banjo player who's out there. I have not met him in person, but he made an offer that he thought would be mutually beneficial to both of us and offer an additional reward for my Patreon supporters and let him get his name out there and the things that he does. So we had a brief talk over the Facebook chat and recorded it to let you all know about a really exciting new thing that you can expect when you sign up to be a Patreon supporter of the podcast. And once again, that's patreon.com/banjopodcast. You can see all about it, but here it is, a short conversation with Eli Gilbert. So today on the podcast, we have a gentleman named Eli Gilbert, and a lot of you who are on the web looking at banjo content, as I know we all are, have probably come across him. He's out there. He puts out a lot of instructional videos. He's a pretty prominent player on the scene, but Eli joins me today. Hey, Eli, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. So first of all, this is listed as a bonus episode, and that might seem strange because I have a guest, but it's listed as a bonus episode, and I'll just be the first one to say that Eli will be more than welcome anytime as a featured guest, but we don't have the luxury of being together in person right now, as I usually do with most of my interviews. But Eli had the great idea and made me an offer that I couldn't refuse. And Eli, why don't you go ahead and explain sort of what we've cooked up for people in terms of a collaboration between the two of us?
Yeah, so I was thinking, I listened to the podcast, and one of the things I do when I listen to the podcast or listen to interviews is when an artist says something like, I listen to J.D. Crowe, or they say, I really like Charlie Parker. That's where I learned how to play jazz on the banjo, by listening to Charlie Parker. Then in my mind, I say, I should go check those things out, and then I go work on that. And so what I thought would be a really cool idea is for me to share what I learned from these interviews. And so I'll be adding on Patreon a little mini lesson, a little banjo lesson based on some of the information that I find in the interview that Keith has. So with each interview that happens, I'll be giving a little bonus content that you can access on Patreon that will be my take on, here's what you can pull directly from the interview to influence your own playing and improve your own playing.
Yeah, that's great. And for anyone unfamiliar with Eli and his work, a big part of what you do, at least a big part of what I see you put out there, is these exact transcriptions, like, I don't know, the J.D. Crowe intro to Cryin' Holy or something like that, note for note, and you'll actually go through and play things slowly and tab things out. So this is really in your wheelhouse, is in terms of the type of stuff that you're already doing for your own channel.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I really like to get in the weeds and really try to figure out exactly what's going on in some of my favorite recordings. And I find it's a really good way to really learn about what your favorite players are doing. So on my own YouTube channel, I spent the last couple of years, learning note for note the things that J.D. Crowe and Earl Scruggs and a lot of other banjo players did. And that's influenced a lot of what I do. And even if I don't play all of those things note for note all the time, there's a lot to be learned from that. So kind of what I'm hoping is in this process, I'm going to expand my own, practice routine. I'm going to be looking at the playing of a lot of different banjo players. As Keith interviews all these different banjo players, I'm going to take a look at some stuff that I probably wouldn't have otherwise. It's going to be really expanding my own knowledge in a big way, which is very cool. But hopefully you'll learn something from these lessons that I'll be putting out. I'm kind of hoping it inspires you to also, look into this stuff and dig a little deeper than you might have otherwise, because these interviews have so much information in them, and it can be a great starting point for the direction that you want to go as a banjo player, as a musician. Yeah,
and really, you reaching out with this idea was pretty much a godsend, because that's almost exactly what it's always been in the back of my mind that I would love to do something like that, put out just additional content related to what I'm already doing, and I just have not been able to find the time. So it's great to have another team member helping me attack that kind of stuff, because that's exactly what I would have envisioned for it. So that's great. Give us a nutshell, like, biography of, just pretend people aren't familiar with you at all. Who do you play with? What's your background, and how did you get to the place you are?
Yeah. So I played music for a bunch of years before I played the banjo, playing guitar, jazz guitar, for the most part. And when I was about 20, my dad took me to a bluegrass festival for the first time, and I saw, it was the Thomas Point Beach Bluegrass Festival in Maine. It's a great festival. And I saw J.D. Crowe in the New South and the Seldom Scene. And I remember Sierra Hull was playing that year, a bunch of really great bands, but specifically J.D. Crowe was a really big influence. So I thought it might be cool to pick up the banjo, and that'll be kind of a side hobby while I'm doing all this other guitar stuff. And fast forward about a year, banjo is the complete obsession. That's all I cared about. That's all I wanted to do. And I eventually ended up transferring out of a jazz conservatory to East Tennessee State University, where they have a bluegrass program.
Sure.
And I spent 3 years there, where I basically learned how to play bluegrass banjo. I kind of showed up not really knowing all that much, and really worked at it, and graduated from there, and ended up moving back to Maine, where I live now. So now I spend most of my time teaching banjo, teaching music, bluegrass and jazz. But then I'm lucky enough that I get to go out on the road with Dale Ann Bradley. That's the current band that I'm playing with now.
Yeah, and she's, of course, how many times has she won the Vocalist of the Year award? At least a couple, right?
5 times.
5, no kidding. I didn't realize that. So yeah, definitely a heavy hitter out there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great.
She's amazing.
Give us a plug for how do people find your channel or your website, or a way to access any of this other stuff that you've been working on the last few years.
Yeah, so if you go on YouTube and you search Eli Gilbert Banjo, you're going to get bombarded with almost 100 different videos that I've put out over the last couple of years, and those are banjo lessons about J.D. Crowe and about basics of banjo playing. But you can also find that information on eligilbertbanjo.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always like to plug Patreon as well.
Sure.
If you're interested in the content that I'm posting on YouTube and on my website, for a couple bucks a month, shamelessly plug that, you can get a bunch of extra content. So similarly to Patreon page that Keith has for this podcast, which you should also check out. It's a great way to support artists who are doing things that you enjoy.
Yeah,
and you
totally.
You can find me on Instagram as well, and just searching Eli Gilbert Banjo. So that's most of the places you can find me. Yeah, and you can email me at eligilbertbanjo@gmail.com, just in case you have any specific questions.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, are you still doing those? One of my favorite things that you used to do are those watch parties. Are you still doing those?
I would really like to get back to that. What Keith's talking about is I would go on Facebook or YouTube, and I would put a YouTube video on the screen, and have my little picture in the corner where I'd be talking about what we're watching. So we'd watch all J.D. Crowe videos, or we'd watch all Earl Scruggs videos, and we'd watch and we'd talk about the videos and maybe analyze what's going on and just kind of hang out. and I was unable to do that for a while for technical reasons. But I've got a shiny new computer, so I think actually we can get back to that, and I'm actually very excited to do that again because that's a lot of fun. So if you find me on Facebook, I've got a Facebook page, Eli Gilbert, as well. That's where those will be hosted. So
yeah, I highly recommend those. There's something uniquely cool about getting to just hang with a bunch of other, some very, very talented banjo players, watching the same thing and just seeing what everyone's noticing about all our favorite, whatever, Jim Mills videos or Sammy Sheeler videos or whatever the person of the day is. And that's usually how you approach it, right? Like you choose one player and do a deep dive on whatever you can find of that person.
Exactly. Yeah. Just trying to find out, what is it about this banjo player that is so fascinating. And if you spend enough time with it, you start to notice, hey, they did that lick in this video. They did that in the last one. So maybe that's part of their style. That's part of it. And what's cool is you never really know who's going to show up and comment. I remember we were watching Sammy Sheeler videos, and for about an hour, Kenny Smith, a guitar player who was with Lonesome River Band for a long time, came and he was talking. He was telling stories and saying, oh yeah, I remember that gig. Here's a story about that. So
how
you kind of
cool.
never know who's gonna. Yeah, that was very cool. So you never know who's gonna drop by and comment on that. So that's a lot of fun too.
Great, man. Well, thanks for everything that you're doing for the banjo community, and can't wait to see what you come up with. And I think it'll just keep helping people more and more. And that's what we're going for, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And thank you for everything that you're doing. I'm super glad to be working on this kind of stuff with you. I think the more people we get, investing their time and resources into the community, I think the more that the community is going to get out of it. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, hope so. All right. Well, stay tuned, everyone. You haven't heard the last of Eli Gilbert. Hopefully one of these days meet you in person and sit down for a proper chat on the podcast. But until then, I'll let you toil away at your tablature and your videos and your practicing and all your other projects.
Great. I can't wait.
Cool, man. Cheers.
Good talking to you.
You too. So there you have it. I'm really excited to see what he comes up with, especially because his first assignment is Matthew Davis. As you know, part 2 of that conversation with Matthew Davis is coming up, and Eli will have some custom content based on some of Matt's secret banjo tricks, and he's going to be able to share that with anyone who signs up on Patreon. So once again, that's patreon.com/banjopodcast. If you'd like to get a hold of the show, contact me at pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. And that's going to do it for this bonus episode. Stay tuned for the second part of the Matthew Davis. And if you sign up on Patreon, you'll get some special banjo licks and tricks from Eli Gilbert. So thanks again, and I'll see you next time.